Okay, I'll come back. I need to share my slides. So this is our fourth week, our fourth lecture on ICH 312. So we're looking at the use of coal as a raw material for the production of organic chemicals today. Coal. Of course, you know coal is one of those fossil materials. We have coal, we have petroleum, and we have natural gas. So today we're looking at how we can process coal to obtain organic chemicals. So the use of coal for organic chemical industry was motivated by the compelling need to find alternative source of carbon to the dominant agricultural-based materials. Initially, it was agricultural-based materials that were used for carbon source, and then because of some shortcomings, like the demands of the agricultural-based materials for food and for timber and so on, there was need to look for an alternative source. And then that was how the use of coal for organic chemical industry raw materials came to play. Okay. So, and also coal processing was really feasible because there were already existing methods for processing of wood. And so coal processing was made feasible by simply adapting to those existing methods that were applied to wood processing, such methods as hydrogenation, gasification, and carbonization. And these same methods are used also for the processing of coal. Okay. I'm admitting your colleagues. Okay. So, and in addition to aliphatic organic chemicals that were derived from coal processing, coal also provides aromatic chemicals that cannot be obtained from agricultural or forestry materials. So at the end of the lecture today, you should be able to know the different types and chemical nature of coal. You'll be able to get enough knowledge about the three main processes for converting coal into chemical products. And you should be able to know the products obtained from each of those processes, and then their end use applications. Then you'll be able to understand that, like agricultural-based raw materials, the use of coal as raw material for organic chemical industry also have shortcomings. Okay. Let's look at the nature and composition of coal. Coal is believed to have been formed by anaerobic decomposition of vegetable matter under the influence of high temperature and pressure over a long period of time. Remember when we're talking of origin of petroleum, origin of fossil materials, we mentioned something about the decomposition, anaerobic decomposition of plant and animal matters. So coal is also believed to have been formed by anaerobic decomposition of vegetable matters. So different types of coal are known to exist worldwide. So we have lignin type of coal. We have lignite. We have bituminous coal, anthracite or hard coal. And this particular one is claimed to have the highest carbon content. That's a hard coal. The structure of coal is very, very complex. So you will see what I'm talking about. It's very complex. And then coal vary widely in constitution and are made up of large molecules consisting mainly of fused aromatic and hydroaromatic rings. Fused aromatic and hydroaromatic rings. Also, oxygen is present as hydroxyl, ether, carbonyl groups. You have oxygen present in coal molecule, present as hydroxyl, present as ether, and present as carbonyl groups. So we just have a very small proportion of nitrogen containing rings. This is a typical approximate constitution of coal. As you can see here, see a lot of carbon, C135, H97, O9, then you have nitrogen and sulfur. This is not a complete molecule. This is just a unit. You can see the end there. So you have the repeating unit of this is how coal looks like. Several repeating units of this is what coal is. So that's why it is said that it's really complex and not yet well understood. So chemically, coal is far from being ideal as raw material for general organic chemical manufacture. And why is it so? It's because of the structure you can see there is very complex. It contains, one reason is that it contains much smaller proportion of hydrogen than most technically important organic chemicals. Number two is that the complex fused ring structure is far removed from relatively small structures of most organic chemicals. You know, organic chemicals, they have to be very simple for possible reactions. This is complex and you need to crack it down to be able to get simple structured compounds. So another issue that makes coal not really so good for production of organic chemicals is because it requires drastic treatment to be able to convert coal into useful chemicals. Another disadvantage is that coal is a solid, and then handling solids on a large scale involves high capital and a lot of labor. So the only main factor that has made coal attractive as raw material for chemical manufacture is the fact that it is cheap. It's the cheapest of all carbon sources except for metal carbonates like chalk, which is actually not that used. It's not useful, organic industry. So despite the above mentioned disadvantages, coal was for many years the major source of organic chemicals until it was displaced in the 1950s and the 1960s by petroleum and natural gas. So the fact that the reserves of coal are much larger than that of petroleum and natural gas, also coupled with the fact that it is much widely distributed, especially in heavily industrialized countries, has helped to encourage people to revive the interest in the use of coal as chemical raw material in recent time, because the reserves are large and because coal is widely distributed in several places. So coal can be processed in three main ways to produce raw materials for the chemical industry. These three main ways are carbonization, which is pyrolysis, and then gasification and hydrogenation. So carbonization process, the processes have been used to produce either mainly coke, not the coke that we drink. Coke is just a spongy material that is obtained after heating coal. So you will see how it is obtained. So carbonization process being used to produce coke together with some gaseous and liquid byproducts, mainly coal gas or town gas, with the co-production of coke and liquid products. Coal gas is a flammable gaseous fuel and is made from coal and supplied to the users via a pipe distribution system. Town gas is a more general term referring to manufactured gaseous fuels produced for sale to customers and municipalities. Coal gas contains a variety of calorific gases, including hydrogen, carbon monoxide, methane, and volatile hydrocarbons, with other small quantities of non-calorific gases such as carbon dioxide and nitrogen. Coke is used in steel manufacture in coke ovens. So carbonization processes involve heating of coal in the absence of air, either at low temperature, that's below 600 degrees centigrade, or at higher one, above 800 degrees centigrade. So in either case, the product will consist of a solid coke, to consist of a mixture of gases, ammonia,
331.
So why are you making noise in the class, please? Please, I don't want anybody. Just mute yourselves. Okay. So, in both cases, that is either you heat the coal in the absence of air at low temperature as below 600 or at higher temperature above 800, you will obtain solid coke. You obtain a mixture of gases consisting ammonia, methane, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen, and mixture of organic chemicals in the form of crude benzol or coal tar. So the individual chemicals present in benzol, you're obtaining it from carbonization, and then benzol and coal tar. So the individual chemicals present there are separated by relatively simple physical methods like distillation method and also by chemical treatments. So the fractional distillation of benzol, and coal tar are for the following fractions. We have light oil at temperature range below 200 degrees centigrade. We have middle oil, temperature between 200 and 250 degrees centigrade. You can see the different compounds that consist these different fractions here. You see also the heavy oil, which is another fraction from 250 to 300 degrees centigrade. And then you have anthracene oil from 300 to 350. And this composed of anthracene, phenanthrene, and carbazole. Okay, I hope people are not waiting. Okay. So now the residual, sorry, I think I have to see how I can get people admitted in here. So we have the residual pitch. So coal carbonization now provides as part of the fractions, residual pitch as part of the fractions of the distillation of coal, of the heavier fraction. So we now have coal carbonization now providing only a small proportion of total demand for aromatic chemicals, which are now largely derived from petroleum sources. However, coal carbonization is still the major source of relatively small tonnage products like anthracene, pyridine, creosote, and xylenols, naphthalene, and so on. I cannot see, I think some people are trying to join. And no, I'm not able to bring them in now. Okay. So still looking at we're still looking at carbonization. From carbonization, we obtain coke, and from coke, we can manufacture acetylene via calcium carbide. So here,
Ma, we cannot hear you.
I got muted and I didn't know. Okay. So I was trying to see I can bring in your colleagues. Know what happened? I can't get them in. Okay, let's go on. So I skip one. So here, calcium carbide is made by heating coke and calcium oxide. Coke and calcium oxide is heated to about 2000 degrees centigrade. So you can see the reaction equation here. Coke and calcium carbide. Coke is the carbon there you see. Calcium oxide plus coke gives you calcium carbide and carbon monoxide. Then the calcium carbide is then treated with water to give acetylene. And acetylene is a very attractive hydrocarbon and can readily be converted into a variety of chemicals. So it's very highly reactive, and so it produces coal-based synthetic routes to the manufacture of aliphatic organic chemicals. And then it's been used for the production of aliphatic organic chemicals for several years and was then displaced by petroleum and natural gas. The major derivatives of acetylene include polyvinyl chloride, the PVC, polyvinyl acetate, polychloroprene, synthetic rubber, and so on. The carbide process for acetylene has a number of features which make it very expensive to operate. One of them is very high reaction temperature. You could see the temperature, we talked of 2000 degrees centigrade. So, and also high endothermic heat of reaction. So it means it consumes a lot of energy. And so, the source of energy will be that of electricity. And electricity in many places is very expensive. So to supply electricity to carry out this process is very expensive. So the process requires also another problem. It requires 3 stages. First of all, you have to produce coke from coal. And then another stage, you now use the coke to react to produce calcium carbide. And then you now use calcium carbide, react with water to produce acetylene. So several steps required for the conversion. And also, sorry, I was distracted by a call. So it's also a very wasteful process because 1/3 of the carbon that is converted to carbon monoxide and 1/3 of it is converted to carbon monoxide and calcium oxide. And then it's very wasteful. 1/3 of the carbon converted to carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. Then it's also converted to impure calcium hydroxide. The calcium oxide is converted to impure calcium hydroxide. Though the high cost of acetylene from coke provided considerable interest to develop more economically attractive methods of manufacture of the products that we saw in the previous slides. So particularly this led to the development of other routes that is not involving acetylene, talking of manufacturing of other organic chemicals that we mentioned here, like PVCs and so on. So other route has to be developed to produce those chemicals instead of going through acetylene as intermediate compound. So consequently, the carbon routes to organic chemicals have fallen into disuse. So now acetylene is obtained by processing petroleum via cracking process, with the cracking temperatures raised over 110 degrees centigrade, and the reactor designed to suit this purpose. So now we have this other process, gasification. So this is carried out either with the coke or coal, directly with coal, or you produce the coke first from coal before carrying out this process. So in either case, the solid is treated with a mixture of oxygen and air and steam. Oxygen and steam, oxygen in form of air, or directly oxygen or air, and then mix that with steam. Then a combustion takes place, produces gases that we need. Of course, gasification is going to produce synthesis gas for us. Synthesis gas is what this process produces. Sorry, let me admit some people here. Okay, so the reaction temperatures are in the range of 750 to 1,150 degrees centigrade. Then gasification aims at producing synthesis gas, which is a mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. So this is a reaction. The carbon plus water gives carbon monoxide and hydrogen as carbon and steam. So this reaction is endothermic. The heat required is provided by burning part of the coke or coal in air. So synthesis gas has a number of applications. There are several things that can be used. There's several things that can be manufactured from synthesis gas. One is the manufacture of ammonia and methanol as a source of hydrogen, also for hydrogenation processes. So you have synthesis gas for the manufacture of ammonia and methanol. Also, you have it as a source of hydrogen for hydrogenation processes. We will soon see that particular process of hydrogenation of coal. Okay. So it is used in the Oxo-Fischer-Tropsch processes. So coal can be converted into petroleum material by hydrogenation. We have looked at carbonization, we have looked at gasification, we want to look at hydrogenation. So coal is converted into a petroleum kind of product by hydrogenation process using molecular hydrogen. You remember the last slide we talked of manufacturing synthesis gas by gasification method, and so that hydrogen that is obtained there can be used for this hydrogenation process we're talking of. So you have the coal pulverized, and then in the presence of iron-based catalyst at 480 to 500 degrees centigrade, about 250 atmosphere pressure. Then you carry this out and you obtain yield of about 75% of crude oil. While coal tar carbonization will yield 8 to 10% coal tar based on the weight of coal. Hydrogenation will yield 75% of crude oil. So you can obtain crude oil from hydrogenation of coal. So, the production of mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen from coal or coke was the basis for town gas manufacture from well before the turn of the century. So processes were adapted to provide appropriate feed for ammonia and methanol synthesis in Germany and elsewhere. So you have the carbon and steam, and then that produce carbon monoxide and hydrogen. And you also have carbon reacting with oxygen to give carbon monoxide. You have carbon monoxide reacting with water to give carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen. So low prices of natural gas in US and naphtha in Europe prompted the change in feedstock. So with no natural gas available in UK, steam reforming of naphtha was also adapted for town gas generation, provided about 90% of supplies by 1968. So that is just a bit of a history. Okay. So now, how do we get raw material processed based on carbohydrate? What we just finished talking about is raw material, obtaining organic raw materials from coal through three processes: carbonization, carbonization, gasification, and hydrogenation. So now we want to see how we can obtain organic chemicals from carbohydrate. The carbohydrates occur widely in plants. The most important carbohydrates where we can obtain organic chemicals from are sucrose, starch, and cellulose. Carbohydrates are used in a number of chemical applications, especially where the original structure is largely retained. Example is the manufacture of glucose as acetate. In addition, sucrose and starch have been used extensively as general purpose carbon source via fermentation processes. We'll still look at fermentation processes today if we have time. So in this case, a chemical of great importance is that of ethyl alcohol, that is ethanol, that is produced by fermentation. So production of ethanol from sucrose, starch, or cellulose is catalyzed by yeast known as Saccharomyces cerevisiae. From the beginning, organic chemical industries, until the development of the petrochemical industry, fermentation process has provided major route of aliphatic chemical manufacture. So until petrochemical industry came in, it was fermentation process that provided major routes to aliphatic chemical manufacture. So it's the introduction of fermentation process to the chemical industry that marked the turning point in organic chemical manufacture. And this is because one of the best known products of fermentation, which is ethanol, serves as an important chemical intermediate for other simple aliphatic organic chemicals. So despite the simple nature of the operation of fermentation technology, it still has some shortcomings. So fermentation has been used for manufacture of most important drug classes such as antibiotics, vitamins, and hormones. Ethylene in the past was manufactured by fermentation of ethanol. But we will also see the shortcomings I'm talking of, shortcomings of fermentation technology, even though it has a lot of advantages. So when you look at fermentation here, production of organic chemicals based on carbohydrate, you carry out fermentation of starch, and then you obtain your glucose, starch, or cellulose. Then you obtain your glucose, then that glucose now, in the presence of yeast, fermentation occurs and forms your ethanol. So you get a number of aliphatic chemicals from ethanol. So this ethanol production or fermentation is based on some microorganism availability, use of microorganisms, and under certain conditions. One process that has been of major significance has been the development of Weizmann by Whitman during World War I. Development of this method for the manufacture of acetone and normal butyl alcohol. From glucose, of course, from starch and cellulose, you get your glucose, and you use this microorganism, Clostridium, and then you obtain your acetone and your N-butyl alcohol. So this route was important, an important source of N-butyl alcohol, until recently it has been displaced by petrochemical routes. Ethyl alcohol, which is ethanol, is used as a solvent in preparing solutions of perfumes, flavors, drugs, and varnishes. It's an important component of beer, wine, and spirit. It's also used as antifreeze and also used in thermometers. So the bulk of ethanol produced is used in polymer applications and as an intermediate for the production of other organic chemicals. In short, it can also be used as gasoline. It's been used in some places like Brazil as gasoline. So let's look at the next one. Anyhow, we can go in the next 7 minutes or so. Let's go to the next slide and look at the fermentation. Sorry, I'm a bit under the cold. Sorry, a bit under cold. So let's see the other one. I have to stop sharing this. And then I will share this other lecture now. Okay. Slow down a bit for me. So we're talking about fermentation. So fermentation is a reaction when raw material is converted into a product, either by the action of microorganisms or by means of enzymes. So this lecture, you should be able to, at the end, this lecture, be able to discuss the factors that affect viability of fermentation routes and also those that affect the fermentation yield. Be able to describe the process of manufacturing fermentation alcohol. You'll be able to explain the process of fermentation products, recovery, and purification. Fermentation is a reaction where raw material is converted into a product by the action of microorganisms or by means of enzymes. When microorganisms are used, they produce enzymes in situ. And then these enzymes catalyze fermentation reactions. So in industrial fermentation, there are two processes. Fermentation processes classified into two. We have the microbial fermentations that's promoted by microorganisms, and we have enzymatic fermentation that's catalyzed by enzymes. So we'll concentrate more on the microbial fermentation processes. So the microorganisms that are used include bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protozoa. During microbial fermentation, a raw organic feed is converted into products by the action of microorganisms. So this is done at different stages. At the first stage, the rate of conversion of the raw material to product is low because you have just few microorganisms. So you will need the microorganisms to multiply to the rate, to the concentration that will enable a higher rate of conversion. So as more microorganisms are formed, the rate starts to rise. The rate then reaches a maximum when there is optimum ratio of unconverted materials and the microorganisms. So you have unconverted materials and you have a lot of microorganisms already multiplied, and then at that stage you have a high rate. So, but the rate will drop when the raw materials become depleted, and so When the raw materials completely finish, then it stops. Then the fermentation process stops. So it's important to note that microorganisms are able to catalyze many types of reactions. The microorganisms in the raw material are ready and able to catalyze several reactions. And so this leads to several products, making it difficult to obtain a particular one product directly. So in this case, you have several products formed because of the different types of reactions. So you need to carry out purification that is essential to bring out just the particular product of interest. So microbial fermentation route, for it to become economically attractive, there are certain conditions. One is that there must be a microorganism that will form the product. Two is that the microorganism must be readily propagated to give consistent yield and quality. Also, the raw materials must be available cheaply. You should have cheap raw material in uniform composition. And then the yield must be economically acceptable. And also the product recovery and purification should be easy. So there are factors that affect fermentation yield. It's important to appreciate the conditions that achieve maximum cell mass. It may not necessarily be those that give maximum yield of the product. So it's sometimes necessary to semi-starve your microorganisms to obtain maximum yield of products. So it's necessary to grow sufficient cell mass of microorganisms to catalyze the fermentation process. So in most fermentations, following are the factors that affect product yield. You have inoculum amount. The initial amount of cells that are fed in is the inoculum amount. So that can also affect the yield. You have the initial level of contamination. So if there's a lot of contamination, then you have different types of microbes that will be producing too many things. And that's feeding on the raw material that you have, producing other things that you're not desiring. And so reducing the yield of the particular product that you need. So to help this situation, the substrate, the raw material has to be sterilized before you inoculate it. That is before you add your microorganisms. You have to sterilize the raw material or the substrates first. So another condition is pH level. Different microorganisms thrive well under different pH conditions. And so there are some that will work optimally at pH of 7. And some will tolerate low pH, like working best, growing best at pH 4 to 5. So it's important to exploit pH tolerance of microorganisms. You know your microorganism, you know the pH at which it will grow best. And so you give it that condition, that particular pH for it to grow well and multiply and give you the amount of cells that you need for optimal production. Another